Okay, also we have dived into Fran's past, learned about her limiting beliefs, which I think resonates with a lot of us, including me. So I'm really excited to get into just how things are now. I know that's a very broad question, but just anything that comes to mind from like the inner work that you do, or like I know for me, external things that I do helps a lot with my mental health, like working out, like, you know, basic things, because I learned that in AA. Like I learned like, hey, if you're an addict, like instead of picking up a drink, do these other this other shit instead. Call your sponsor, call a friend, freaking work out, because sometimes just you take a walk and you're like, oh shit, I don't want to drink anymore. You know what I mean? So it's like anything like that you feel like has worked for you, that you've like finessed your, you know, your maintenance, your inner maintenance over the years that you want to share.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned in the last part, I've cultivated certain internal tools that, you know, it's still a work in progress. Like I don't think I'm ever going to stop grappling with the things I grew up with. You know, it's a constant practice. But now I'm going to read from my notebook. I'm a lot less insecure now as a 34-year-old. I think just by virtue of time. I've just encountered so many different people and environments and situations along the way. Like I can't not grow from that. And just being more comfortable I think that's the biggest thing. Being more comfortable making mistakes. I think in the past, because we were raised to like think mistakes. I mean, even now, I'm just it's like a little mistake when Aya's barefoot steps on the floor.
That walking on eggshells feeling.
Yeah, it's like that was our entire childhood.
That was our childhood.
So, you know, my entire 20s was like, oh, if I make a mistake, even though it's not even a mistake,
it's going to be a catastrophe. Like the fireballs are going to come out of the sky.
And that's actually the mindset that needed to be like one of the biggest mindset shifts I needed to tackle was like questioning that and being like, okay, if I make this quote unquote mistake, what catastrophe would happen? And, you know, even if there was a consequence, like a negative one, questioning that too and being like, so what would that do to you, like to your life? And so I think by doing that more and more in various ways, like just failing in various aspects of my life and then finding out, oh, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds easy, but obviously there are times when like, you know, like my trauma, because, you know, your body holds trauma. So like sometimes my body is just overwhelmed by all the triggers or like the stimulations. Whatever, I don't care. And so like sometimes it's hard to like, you know, you gotta let that body, you gotta let that body ride through it, you know. But for the most part, it's really helped, like, because, you know, practicing that with your brain, like, it helps your body follow in terms of, okay, maybe my nervous system doesn't need to be so active all the time.
Yeah, the fight or flight.
Yeah. And also, like, I've just learned to, like, ask for help more. Before I was just like, no, I gotta do it myself. I still sometimes have that. I'm like, why would anyone want to help me? Like, I should just know how to do this myself. And
like, I don't want to bother people. I don't want to
bother people.
Yep. These are all things we just grew up with. Like we internalized this in our households.
It's very ingrained, like deep in our brains and souls and body. And so, you know, I've gotten more accustomed to being like, hey, I feel scared. Can you stay with me? Or I'm having a hard time just handling this assignment at work. Can you help? Like, even that, I'm still like, oh.
It's not a sign of weakness. Doesn't mean you're a failure.
Yeah. But, you know, it's still there. Like, the first thought sometimes is like, wow, you suck. And I just have to be like, hey.
I'm laughing because I was the same way.
But exactly. It's like, you gotta, you know, that might be your first thought, but you don't have to stick with that thought. And then, you know, speaking of the friendships from my past where I never really like fully explored them, now I have fewer people, but they're very good people. Like I know I can rely on them, and like you're one of them. I mean, you've always been.
Better be.
But like you've always been one of them, but now it's like I feel like we're both just now at a place where we're both just like we're not gonna judge each other. Like we just need to like just be honest. And the same with Chris. Like that was really a revelation for me. Like, you know, I thought he was just gonna be a casual person. Like, oh, you're just gonna be like the same as every other person I've ever dated. But
see, that's another limiting belief right there.
Exactly.
You don't want to be projecting that into your reality because you're gonna get more of that back.
Yeah, it turned from like, oh, I'm not attractive enough or whatever, so I'm not gonna ever get laid. Or have someone who is attracted to me or likes me for my personality. So what? Why would anyone go with me? Two, hey, maybe if I just become like sort of like, ooh, casual, one night stands, ho, slut phase, maybe I'll get more people and they'll think I'm cool, but not too cool. Like they won't stay with me because obviously why would they? So Chris was, I guess, another turning point where he was like, no, you can tell me you love me. Like, I actually have loved you too. I just didn't know because you were so insistent on being casual, which I was just like, oh man, if I was just honest earlier, you could have even started earlier. And now he's one of the people who helps, like we help each other really, where he helps me. I'm going to cry again. What the heck? He's like one of the people who's just like, hey, you're doing the thing again that you sometimes do where you are saying something that you need or want from me or from us. And then in the next breath, you're like, oh, but only if you want to. Or like, oh yeah, I know it's like such a stupid question.
It's that thing of like, I don't want to bother this person.
Yeah,
Let me diminish myself.
Same thing. And he's like, why are you doing that? You know that you're like the most important person to me. I want to provide for you. I want to like love you. Like you should help me. And I've never had that with any other, but that's because, you know, my self-limiting beliefs are always like, I'm just going to go for these types of people. So it was a blessing that Chris came into my life because I was still in that same mindset of like, oh, I'm just going to get like a casual, a slut face. But I was like, no, this is someone I want to be with for the rest of my life. Like I didn't think I would ever have this. So that shifted my perspective of like, oh, like I'm actually deserving of love just like anyone else. So
and sometimes it does take that third party person. So like when you were talking about that, like it reminded me of when I was first, you know, figuring out if I should break up with my ex because like parenting our daughter wasn't working out. Like I went on a long walk with Kyle, my friend, because I had wanted to drink, but I, you know, thankfully remembered like to call a friend instead of drinking, and he was the friend that I called. And after my talk with him, it just like I was like, shit, like you're right. Like he wasn't trash talking my ex or anything, but he was just saying these observations from an objective standpoint that I just could not see because I was so entrenched in, again, the limiting beliefs, like my rose-colored glasses, because I was just entrenched in this relationship and that was all I had known, that it took someone else's voice, someone outside of me to kind of wake me up a little bit. So I'm just saying that because that was Chris for you. That's another very helpful strategy when you're just trying to work through some things. Just call people, like what you said. It's not a failure. It doesn't mean you're a failure that you're asking for help, or not even help, just like a sounding board. Yeah. Hey, I want to talk through these thoughts with you. What do you think? Or like, hey, I'm going through this situation. What do you see from your perspective, right? Yeah. So I'm really glad that you brought up that.
Actually just being able to voice it to someone who you trust and who will listen. That's most not judge and just give you the space. It's like even helpful in and of itself. Like not even with advice, just like, oh, someone cares. Like I'm not alone. Right. So I totally get that. And actually just thinking about, I just remembered I said earlier, like, oh, Chris is actually a blessing that he came into my life because I thought he was like a casual blah, blah, blah. But actually I wouldn't even have met him because I met him on a site that like, on an app. So, you know, I was like, it's an app. So I'm like, but
that's how I feel about that.
But this is an app where it's like a lot more, it's not like Tinder or Bumble. It's like, for a lot more open-minded people. Like, of course, there are still creepos on that, like with any app, but it was more like if you're into like an open relationship or like if you're into, you know, BDSM, like that's a place where people go because they don't feel as judged. So I wouldn't, if I wasn't already, like I mentioned earlier, I tried being a dominatrix because it was interesting to me. If I wasn't even in that headspace of like, oh, like I could try being a dominatrix. Well, maybe I should try this app because it's like for more open-minded people and I can be like, hey, I'm also into this and this. I wouldn't have met Chris because then I would have stuck with the Tinders and the friggin' Bumbles and even Hinge.
Yeah, Hinge just like letting me down these days. Maybe it's just Utah.
No, I mean, even Hinge back then I was like, oh, it's like for like the serious people. But even then it was like, oh, there's the same people.
That's like another episode entirely.
Yeah, but, you know, well, whatever. But try this other app, guys. You know what?
What is it?
I'm gonna plug it.
Plug it.
It's called Feeld, Feeld.
I've never heard of it.
Well, now you've heard of it.
Is it just like for polyamorous people? Because I'm not.
No.
That still work for me. Okay, so there's like
There's more
regular.
open-minded people. I mean, there are straight people, but like there are also people who are like straight but open to like, hey, if you wanted to try something else. I'm just saying that for people who are like, hey, maybe I should expand my horizons, because maybe Tinder, maybe Tinder and Bumble, they're more like for people who are looking for a traditional, woman and man meet cute. But like if you think about it, a lot of the people I met on those apps are like, just people are like, okay, you're on my list of like 5 women. Hey, do you and this other woman want to do a threesome? I'm like, do you even consider my feelings? Do you even consider like, I didn't even know I was on your list. You know what I mean? So if you're sick of that,
okay,
expand, or OkCupid, it's not as bad if you pay for it, which just sucks, but capitalism, Anyway.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that app. I mean, I was like getting ready to be like, look, I'm getting really sick of Hinge, but anyway.
Oh, we got 4 minutes. So yeah, I'm just gonna read this. I'm in a day job I like. Here's the differences. I'm in a day job I like.
Here's the differences.
And this was actually, I've been at this job for 6 months, but before then, I was in another job I was in for less than a year. But this is where the difference is. Like, compared to my first job where I stayed for 5 years before I left, this one, I was already experiencing trauma from my coworkers. Like, they were just bullying me and like being passive aggressive. And like maybe 4 or 5 months in, I was like, oh my God, like I'm not gonna do this. Like, I've been in situations where people like walk over me, or they think my voice isn't. And like by this point, I knew like my value, I knew my worth. That's the difference. I had a stronger foundation of like, why am I being treated this way when I have a lot to offer?
Right.
So without that foundation, I wouldn't have been able to be like, I'm going to apply to all the jobs because I deserve it. I would have been like, well, I'm stuck here.
Right.
So now I'm there. I'm in a healthy relationship. I've kept the friends who mean the most to me. I'm in therapy. I'm working on my acting more seriously. Like, I'm actually taking risks with that. And I can't read my handwriting. But yeah, the dominatrix part. I still have aspects of myself that I'm learning to regulate or manage, but I'm more intentional about that. So, and right now I think what I'm working on is like balancing like trying too hard versus like just resting back and being like, well, why am I gonna try?
Feminine energy. I've actually been doing a lot of research on feminine energy recently. Are you aware?
No, wait, what is that again?
So,
I feel like you mentioned it before.
I'll probably do an episode about it, but masculine energy and feminine energy is like yin and yang. We need both energies in the world. Yeah. Masculine is like the doing energy, like what we do at work, right? Like let me meet the deadline, let me like get shit done, let me hustle. Wake up at 5, go to bed at whatever. Feminine energy, it doesn't mean laziness. That's a misconception. It just means you're in your receiving energy. Yeah. So it's kind of like manifesting. A lot of people think manifesting is stupid, but I mean, it's like it's knowing like, hey, like for me, like I want to be rich one day, like, more money than I have. Obviously I'm taking the action. I'm tapping into my masculine energy to do those things. But at the same time, I'm also in my feminine energy. Like, I know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to like force it. Like, if I need to rest so that I can do better work tomorrow, I'm going to rest. Right. Yeah. So it's the receiving and the being and the accepting and the intuitive nurturing.
Yeah. Does that make sense? It does. Actually, that's a good way to put it. I think in that frame of mind, like I'm way more masculine in my energy because, I'm like, this goes back to how we were raised.
We both had to be masculine because we had to look out for ourselves.
Mom was like, get good grades, like do all the chores. Like, why is this not in place?
Do everything and be everything for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. And so like now that's my baseline. So, and I've gotten feedback in work, in acting, just to like, it's okay to like pause.
Right.
Like,
just be.
And then like something will, whatever action it is that you feel inspired to do, it'll come from that and not like the urge to do. And that's something, that's the current journey in my present that I'm
Me too.
working on.
Me too,
that's
bro.
interesting.
Just like more feminine energy and just letting things just come into your life because it's gonna come. Like, yeah, again, not being lazy. That's the thing. That's the hard line. Don't be. Doesn't mean you sit on the couch all day. Oh yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. Okay, that's what I'm working on because like there's a difference between lazy and receiving, and that's like, okay, now I'm getting the picture.